Welcome to the first episode of The Dark Line, a direct line into the unknown. I'm Damian Talbot, your host, and tonight we begin our journey into the eerie, the unexplained, and the unshakable mysteries that linger in the dark. Tonight, I've selected 4 voicemails that will make you question what's lurking just beyond the edges of the known world. These are calls from people who have seen figures in the shadows, heard voices in the silence, and felt something watching them when nothing was there. Some will brush these off as tricks of the mind. Others will feel a chilling sense of recognition. But after tonight, you might start wondering, what if someone or something is watching you? The Dark Line is open, and our first caller dialed in at 2:14 a.m. A hiker alone in Yellowstone. He left this message. Listen closely.
Hey, I don't know why I'm calling, but I feel like I need to tell someone this. Maybe if I say it out loud, it'll make sense. Maybe someone else has seen it too. This happened last month. I was deep in the backcountry, maybe 10 miles from the nearest road. No one else around. Or at least that's what I thought. It was late night, after 2 a.m., I think. I was in my tent just dozing off when I heard this deep guttural grunt. At first I thought maybe a bear, but this was different. It sounded almost human. And then I heard footsteps. Not 4 legs, 2. Heavy. It was walking around my tent, slow, like it was checking me out. I held my breath, listening. I could hear its weight shifting, twigs snapping underneath it. Whatever this was, it wasn't rushing. It wasn't running. It was taking its time. I grabbed my flashlight, unzipped the tent just an inch, and I saw it. A shadow, taller than any person. At least 8 feet. Broad shoulders, long limbs, and its eyes. They glowed when my light hit them. Not like an animal's. More like someone watching me from the dark. But they weren't normal eyes. They weren't reflecting my light. They were emitting their own. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I thought maybe if I stayed still, it would lose interest. But then it leaned forward. It knew I was watching. It knew I was awake. And then it did something I still can't explain. It ran a hand or something down the side of my tent. Not hard, not clawing, just feeling, testing. That was enough for me. I shut my eyes, held my breath, pretended I wasn't there. And then it turned away. It wasn't scared. It wasn't in a hurry. It just walked back into the trees, like it knew I wasn't going anywhere, like I wasn't worth the trouble. I laid there until sunrise. My whole body was locked up, stiff from fear. I told myself maybe I imagined it. Maybe I was dreaming. But when I finally got the courage to step outside, the ground was torn up, footprints, deep, huge. And next to my tent was something else. A single mark, a handprint, 5 long, thick fingers pressed into the dirt, and I swear, they were too long. I ran, left everything, my tent, my gear, all of it. I hiked back as fast as I could, but when I came back later that afternoon, everything was gone. My tent, my backpack, the fire pit I built. There was no sign I had ever been there. But here's the thing, the weirdest part. I checked my GPS. I checked my map. I was in the right place. I know I was. But the clearing where I had set up camp, it wasn't a clearing anymore. The trees were back, thick, old, like they'd been growing there for decades. I walked in the circles, retraced my steps, even climbed up a ridge to get a better view, but it was like my campsite had never existed, like I had never been there at all. Except I wasn't alone. I felt it before I saw it. that same pressure, that feeling of being watched. My stomach dropped, my skin went cold, and then just at the edge of the trees, I saw them. Not one, not two, but three sets of glowing eyes watching me. They didn't move, they didn't come closer, but I knew I had to leave. Now, I turned and ran. I don't remember how long I ran for. I don't even remember how I got back to my truck. Just that by the time I did, my hands were shaking too bad to start the engine. But before I left, I looked back, and they were still there, just standing at the tree line, watching. And ever since that night, no matter where I go, no matter what I do, I swear I still feel them, like they're waiting.
Wow, that's chilling. I can't imagine what it must have been like to be out there, alone, with whatever that was watching you, and the way your entire campsite just disappeared. That's something straight out of a nightmare. Thank you for sharing this with us. I know it probably wasn't easy to relive, but stories like yours remind us that there are still things out there we can't explain. Now, I'm going to bring my grandson Mark on the air to discuss what we just listened to. Mark, have you ever wondered what lurks in the deep wilderness of our national parks? Because tonight's story about a mysterious encounter in Yellowstone challenges everything we think we know about what's really out there watching us.
Hi, Grandpa. Thanks for having me today. The whole story is fascinating, especially the timing of 2:14 a.m. There's something eerily specific about that detail that adds such authenticity to the account.
You know what really strikes me? The calculated nature of the encounter. This wasn't some aggressive beast charging through the woods. It was methodical, almost studying the caller. The way it deliberately touched the tent suggests intelligence.
And those footprints the caller described, deep and huge. That indicates something with significant weight, which matches the heavy footsteps they heard.
Well, what's particularly interesting is how this entity seemed to understand human behavior. It knew the caller was awake, knew they were watching. We're dealing with something that shows signs of advanced cognition here.
Those glowing eyes, though, not reflecting light but emitting their own. That detail keeps appearing in cryptid encounters across different cultures and time periods, doesn't it?
Exactly. And let's talk about what happened afterward. The complete disappearance of the campsite. Those mature trees appearing overnight. It suggests we're dealing with something that can manipulate physical reality itself. You know, I've been researching similar incidents in national parks, and there's a pattern of these temporal anomalies.
So what you're saying is this isn't an isolated incident. People have reported similar experiences?
Oh, absolutely. There are numerous accounts of people finding themselves in places that shouldn't exist, or familiar locations suddenly becoming unrecognizable. And get this, according to National Park Service statistics, an average of 1,600 people go missing in national parks each year, with some cases involving bizarre circumstances that defy explanation.
The psychological impact on this caller is particularly telling, starting almost apologetically and ending with genuine terror in their voice.
Right, and that progression matches what trauma specialists observe in people who've experienced genuine psychological shock. The callers attempt to rationalize what they saw, first thinking it was a bear, then trying to convince themselves they were dreaming. That's textbook cognitive dissonance.
Well, what really gets me is how they abandoned thousands of dollars worth of camping equipment. That's not something someone does for a prank.
And consider this. Yellowstone spans 3,472 square miles of wilderness. That's larger than Rhode Island and Delaware combined. The caller was 10 miles from the nearest road. That's significant because studies show less than 10% of park visitors venture more than a mile from their vehicles.
The location itself seems crucial to the story. All that untamed wilderness could hide almost anything, couldn't it?
Exactly. And here's something interesting. Biologists estimate that we've only discovered about 20% of Earth species. In fact, researchers are still finding new species in Yellowstone, including several previously unknown microorganisms in the hot springs just last year.
That makes you wonder what else might be out there, especially given how organized these entities seem to be. It's the scout, the testing, the return with others.
You know, there's actually a fascinating parallel here with documented pack behavior in higher primates. The systematic observation, the apparent hierarchy, the coordinated movement, it suggests some form of social structure. But what's truly unique is the reality-bending aspect.
The way they seem to operate according to some kind of protocol, it's almost like they were following scientific method, isn't it?
That's an interesting perspective, and it raises some troubling questions. If these entities are conducting some kind of research, what exactly are they studying? And why? According to recent studies in human psychology, being watched can fundamentally alter behavior. It's called the observer effect.
Well, that certainly adds another layer to the caller's ongoing sensation of being watched.
And here's something to consider. Throughout history, nearly every indigenous culture has stories about beings that exist between our world and others. The Crow tribe, who lived in Yellowstone for generations, have legends about shape-shifting beings who could manipulate the physical world.
That historical context really adds weight to this modern encounter, doesn't it?
It does. And you know what's particularly intriguing? Modern quantum physics suggests the possibility of multiple dimensions existing alongside our own. Some theoretical physicists propose that what we perceive as paranormal activity might actually be interactions with these other dimensions.
So these entities might not be supernatural at all, just beyond our current understanding of reality?
Precisely. And that might explain why we have so little physical evidence. We're trying to document something that operates outside our conventional understanding of physics. The disappearing campsite, the instantly matured trees, these might be glimpses of how these entities actually interact with space-time.
That's both fascinating and terrifying when you think about it.
Well, I suppose the takeaway here is that there's still so much we don't understand about our world. And maybe, just maybe, something out there is trying to understand us too. And maybe, just maybe, if you have seen the same thing in one of our country's national parks, the dark line is open. A lone surfer, a silent ocean, and something waiting beneath the surface. Our next caller left their message at 9:27 a.m. He was out on the water at sunrise. He said it was Newport Beach, California. He was expecting nothing but waves and solitude. He thought he was alone. But the Pacific has secrets. And some secrets, well, they don't want to stay hidden. This is his story.
Yeah, haha. Hi. I don't even know why I'm leaving this. Maybe just to get it out of my head. Maybe to see if anyone else has felt it too. This happened 2 weeks ago. Early morning. Like, before sunrise early. It was perfect. No wind, no boats, no one else in the water. Just me, my board, and the Pacific. I've been surfing for years. I know what the ocean feels like. I know the push and pull of the tide, the movement of the swells. But that morning, the water felt wrong. Too still. No ripples, no currents. Just this heavy silence, like the whole ocean was holding its breath. I sat there for maybe 20 minutes waiting for a set. The sun was barely a hint on the horizon. Just that deep, endless dark, stretching in every direction. The kind of dark that makes you feel small. And then something hit my board, hard, not like a wave, not like a bump, like something testing me. I jerked up, scanned the water, no fins, no shadow, just dark water stretching out all around me. But I swear, it was down there, watching. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, a drifting log, a fish. But then I looked down, and I saw something. It wasn't an animal, it wasn't a person, it was pale. I could barely make out its shape in the water, but I saw enough. Hands, long fingers, webbed. I told myself I was imagining things, light playing tricks on me, but then I noticed something else. The water around me, the deep black of it wasn't reflecting the sky anymore. It was darker, like something underneath was swallowing the light. It wasn't moving like a fish. It wasn't swimming. It was just floating there, right beneath me, like it was waiting. I sat frozen. I don't know how long. A second? A minute? I don't know. But then it moved. Not a fish. Not a drift of seaweed. It moved with purpose. It moved like it knew me. I panicked. I kicked hard. But that's when I felt it. Something grabbed my ankle. It wasn't a tangle of seaweed. It wasn't the pull of the tide. These were fingers, long, strong, cold. I kicked, twisted, trying to break free, but the grip, it wasn't just strong. It was deliberate. It squeezed, just for a second, like it wanted me to feel it, to know it was real. And then it let go, on purpose. I scrambled back onto my board, paddled harder than I ever have in my life. When I got to shore, my whole body was shaking. I checked my leg, expecting to see bruises, scratches, something, but there was nothing, no marks, no pain. Just this deep cold. My skin felt like it had been soaking in ice water for hours. I ran all the way to my car. I sat in the front seat, dripping wet, breathing hard, trying to make sense of it, trying to tell myself I imagined it. Since that morning, I haven't been back in the water. But it doesn't matter, because now I feel it everywhere. And last night, I woke up gasping for air, like I'd been drowning in my sleep. I don't think I was supposed to leave.
Not everything in the deep stays there. Sometimes it follows you home. It lingers just out of sight, in the silence before sleep, in the stillness of dark water, in the spaces where you swear you're alone, but no, you're not. Some things let go, but that doesn't mean they're done with you. You know, Mark, the ocean holds more mysteries than space itself. We've only explored about 5% of our own seas. And today, I came across a story that proves just how little we truly understand what lurks in those depths.
Oh, that's fascinating. Like, what kind of discovery are we talking about here?
So picture this. It's before sunrise, that perfect pre-dawn stillness. An experienced surfer is out on the Pacific, completely alone. The kind of solitude most surfers dream about, but in this case, it turned into something straight out of our deepest maritime fears.
Hmm. Early morning usually means ideal conditions, though, right? That glassy, pristine water surfers live for?
That's exactly what makes this so unsettling. The surfer, who had been riding waves for over a decade, described the water as feeling fundamentally wrong, like the entire ocean was holding its breath. No ripples, no currents, nothing.
That reminds me of what marine biologists call a dead zone. Areas where normal ocean movement just stops, though those usually occur much deeper.
Well, here's where it gets even stranger. After about 20 minutes of this unnatural stillness, something hit their board. Not like a typical bump from a curious seal or dolphin. They described it as something deliberately testing them.
Testing them. That implies some kind of intelligence behind it.
Precisely. And what they saw next, well, it challenges everything we think we know about marine life. They described seeing something pale beneath the surface, with distinctly human-like hands and long webbed fingers.
That's absolutely chilling. Could it have been some kind of undiscovered marine mammal?
They were very specific about this. It wasn't any known animal. And then the water around them started becoming unnaturally dark, like something was actively absorbing the light. You know how the ocean typically reflects the sky. This wasn't doing that anymore.
That's fascinating because deep sea creatures like the dragonfish actually create zones of darkness using specialized organs. But they're never found in surfing depths.
Right. And then came the moment that really makes this account unforgettable. Whatever it was grabbed their ankle. Not just brushed against it, grabbed it with what they described as long, strong, cold fingers.
And what happened next?
Here's the truly unsettling part. It squeezed, just for a moment, like it was sending a message. Then it deliberately let go. The surfer said they paddled harder than they ever had in their life to reach shore.
This actually follows a pattern in maritime folklore across different cultures. Nearly every coastal civilization has stories of intelligent ocean beings that make deliberate contact with humans.
And the psychological impact has been profound. They haven't returned to the water since, but they're experiencing what marine psychologists call thalassophobic aftermath, waking up feeling like they're drowning, sensing a presence even when they're nowhere near the ocean.
That's interesting because studies show less than 1% of reported ocean encounters result in this kind of lasting psychological impact.
The most haunting part was their final words. I don't think I was supposed to leave. Like they violated some ancient unwritten law of the sea. And maybe they did. We've only explored about 5% of our oceans, remember?
Well, that's a sobering thought. The Mariana Trench alone could hide entire ecosystems we know nothing about.
And consider this. We discover approximately 2,000 new marine species every year. Who's to say what else might be out there, watching us from the depths?
Though most new discoveries tend to be microscopic or deep-sea dwelling creatures, not something that could interact with surfers.
That's what makes this account so compelling. It challenges our understanding of not just what lives in our oceans, but how intelligent these beings might be. The deliberate nature of the interaction suggests something far more complex than we're prepared to acknowledge.
So, what do you think this means for our understanding of marine life?
I think it means we need to approach the ocean with more humility. We're not just dealing with mindless creatures. We might be sharing our planet with intelligences we barely comprehend.
And perhaps intelligences that have been studying us just as much as we've been studying them.
You know what really keeps me up at night? Wondering how many other encounters like this have gone unreported because people feared they wouldn't be believed.
Or how many similar encounters throughout history were dismissed as sailors' tales.
Well, one thing's certain. I'll never look at early morning surfing the same way again. Sometimes the perfect conditions might be perfect for something else, too.
That's a chilling thought to end on. Maybe we're not always alone out there in those pristine morning waters.
And maybe, just maybe, we're not meant to be. Now I have a young lady who leaves a chilling voicemail about a childhood memory she can't explain. Years after her troubled cousin Mikey's death, her little cousins start talking to someone only they can see, someone who knows things only Mikey would know.
Hey, hi, Grandpa. Thank you for setting this up. My name is Marissa, and I'm from the Midwest. I don't usually believe in the paranormal, but I don't know how else to explain this.
So here's some background.
When I was a kid, like 8 or 9, my cousin Mikey lived with us for a while. He was in his 20s, struggling with addiction, and honestly, he made my life miserable. I don't think he meant to, but he wasn't in a good place. He could be mean, unpredictable. One minute, he was joking around. The next,
Well, I'll never forget the time he lit fireworks on me.
it was summer, and the air smelled like hot pavement and barbecue smoke. The sun had barely set, and the sky was still holding onto streaks of orange and pink. I remember the hum of cicadas, the way the neighbors' porch lights were flicking on one by one. Mikey had been acting weird all day, fidgety, restless, mumbling to himself. My parents were inside, probably assuming he was just in one of his moods. But out in the driveway, it was just me and him. I don't remember what I said. Maybe nothing at all. But suddenly, Mikey grabbed a handful of bottle rockets, the kind with the long wooden sticks that whistle before they explode. He flicked a lighter, the flame trembling in the dusk, and touched it to the fuses. I didn't understand what was happening until it was too late. The first one hissed and shot straight toward me. I jumped back just in time for it to explode at my feet. Then another one, and another. Bright sparks popped around me, burning little holes in my socks. I ran. One of them clipped my arm before it burst, leaving a tiny, angry burn that took weeks to heal. I remember screaming, my voice mixing with the sharp crackle of the fireworks. And Mikey? He just laughed. Not like it was a joke, not like he was playing around. Like it meant nothing. That was the night my parents finally kicked him out. He died a few years later. Fast forward to when I was 16. I used to babysit my little cousins, 6-year-old twins. One night, I was watching them at my parents' house. I was in the kitchen when I heard them talking. At first, I thought they were just playing, but when I peeked in, they were having a full-on conversation with no one. I asked, "Hey, who are you talking to?" They looked up at me and said, "Uncle Mikey." And I swear, my whole body just went cold. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Uncle Mikey." They nodded like it was the most normal thing in the world. "Yeah, he's really funny." I sat down and started asking questions. Questions only he would know the answers to. And they got every single one right. Then I asked what he looked like. One of them tilted their head thinking, "He has brown hair, a scruffy face, and he wears a hat like this." She held her hand above her head, mimicking a baseball cap. Mikey always wore a baseball cap. I didn't know what to do, so I handed them some crayons and a piece of paper. Can you draw him for me? A few minutes later, they gave me the picture. It was him. The same face I remembered, the same crooked smile, the same damn hat. I don't know what to think. I don't even know what I'm hoping you'll say. But I do know this. Mikey never really left.
Thank you, Marissa, for sharing your story. Childhood memories can be tricky things. Sometimes they blur, sometimes they twist in ways that make us question what really happened. But then there are moments that cut through all of that, the ones that stick with us because they feel real, too real to ignore. Mikey was a presence in your life in ways both unsettling and unforgettable. And even after all these years, maybe he still is. The dark line is still open. What happens when childhood trauma collides with the supernatural? I recently came across a story that challenges everything we think we know about how the past haunts us. Sometimes, literally.
Grandpa, that's quite a setup. What kind of story are we talking about?
Well, it centers on this woman named Marissa from the Midwest and her cousin Mikey, who lived with her family when she was 8. He was in his 20s, struggling with addiction, and what started as a family, trying to help, turned into something much darker.
How so? What happened?
Picture this summer evening, the air thick with barbecue smoke, cicadas humming, sunset fading. Mikey, who'd been acting erratic all day, suddenly grabs some bottle rockets and starts deliberately shooting them at her.
That's absolutely horrifying. A grown man attacking a child with fireworks?
And what's particularly chilling is how she describes his laugh. Not malicious, not playful, just empty. Like hurting her meant nothing. She still has the scar from where one of the rockets caught her arm.
You know, studies show that childhood trauma involving family members can be particularly damaging because it breaks that fundamental trust we're supposed to have in our relatives.
Exactly right. And her parents finally kicked him out that night. He died a few years later, and you'd think that would be the end of the story. But here's where it takes an unexpected turn.
What happened next?
Fast forward to when she's 16, babysitting her 6-year-old twin cousins, kids who never met Mikey. She overhears them having this detailed conversation with thin air, and when she asks who they're talking to...
Let me guess, they say it's Uncle Mikey?
Precisely. But here's what makes it truly extraordinary. When she tests them with questions only Mikey would know, they nail every single detail. And then, when she asks them to draw him,
They couldn't possibly have known what he looked like, right?
that's what makes this so compelling. They drew him perfectly, down to his signature baseball cap. And you know what's fascinating? Research shows that children under 7 tend to be more receptive to paranormal experiences, what some researchers call the transparency of consciousness.
That's really interesting because it ties into what psychologists call continuing bonds theory. The idea that maintaining a connection with the deceased can actually be healthy for processing grief.
But here's what complicates it. How do you process that kind of connection when the person caused you trauma? Because now, she's forced to reconcile 2 versions of Mikey. The one who terrorized her and the one apparently bringing joy to these children.
That must create some intense cognitive dissonance.
And what's particularly striking is how she maintains this remarkable balance between acknowledging the harm while recognizing his struggles with addiction. Studies show that about 60% of people with substance use disorders experienced some form of childhood trauma themselves.
So, in a way, this story is about cycles of trauma and the possibility of breaking them.
Exactly. And whether you believe in the supernatural elements or not, it raises these fascinating questions about how trauma echoes through generations and how we carry our past with us.
The way she ends it is particularly powerful. Mikey never really left.
That phrase works on so many levels, doesn't it? Whether you interpret it literally or metaphorically, it speaks to how the past continues to influence our present. Some studies suggest that trauma can actually affect DNA expression across generations.
So, in a very real sense, our past experiences do continue to haunt us, even at a cellular level.
And maybe that's what makes this story so compelling. It's not just about whether ghosts are real. It's about how we process trauma, seek redemption, and try to make peace with the complicated legacies we inherit from our families.
It really makes you think about how we all carry our own ghost, doesn't it?
And perhaps that's the real lesson here, that healing isn't always a straight line. Sometimes it takes unexpected turns, challenges our beliefs, and forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about forgiveness and understanding. The dark line is still open, and we have one more call. Our final call takes us deep into the Superstition Mountains. A lone hiker searching for something that's been lost for over a century, something many have died trying to find, the lost Dutchman's mine, and maybe, just maybe, he found it. Listen closely.
Yeah. Hello. I don't even know how to explain this, but if anyone's out there, if anyone knows about this place, I need to know I'm not losing my mind. It happened last winter. I was out in the superstitions, following a lead I'd found in an old newspaper archive. Some article from the 50s about a guy who disappeared out here. Claimed he'd found something before he vanished. I thought it was just another tall tale, but then I found something. Something I shouldn't have. I was about 10 miles in, near Weaver's Needle, when I saw him, a man. A prospector. At least, that's what he looked like. Wide-brimmed hat, long beard, worn-out boots, and this old canvas satchel slung over his shoulder. He was just standing there, watching me from a rocky outcrop above the trail. And then he waved me down. He looked real, just as real as anyone I've ever met. And he says, "You come looking for gold, boy." I thought maybe he was some old desert rat, one of those guys who lives off-grid. So I asked if he needed help, but he just shook his head and said, "Ain't about needing help, it's about knowing the way." And then he turned and walked into the brush. I don't know why, but I followed him. Something about the way he moved. It was like he wasn't in a hurry. Like he knew I'd come after him. We walked for maybe half a mile, past rock formations I didn't recognize, into a canyon that wasn't on any map. Then he stopped, right in front of an opening in the rock. A mine shaft. The entrance was reinforced with old wooden beams, half rotted. I could see rusted tools scattered around, like someone had left in a hurry, like they never came back. I turned to ask him something, but he was gone. No footprints, no sound, like he was never there. But then, I saw something carved into the wooden beam. When I brushed away some of the dust on it, I saw a name. Jacob Waltz. I recognized it. The lost Dutchman himself. The man, they say, found a gold vein richer than anything ever recorded, and took the secret to his grave. I don't know what came over me, but I stepped inside, just a few feet at first. The air was cold, colder than it should have been for the desert. The smell of damp rock and something else, something metallic, like old blood. My flashlight barely cut through the dark. I know I should have turned back, but I kept walking. 20 yards, 30, 40. The walls were covered in deep gouges, like something had clawed at the rock. Then I saw it. Gold. A vein of it. Running through the rock like lightning frozen in stone. I reached out to touch it, and I heard him. Right behind me. Breathing. He said, "That's the Gold's boy. It's still here. If you're willing to take it." I ran. I don't even remember getting back to my car. But when I checked my GPS later, there was no record of the detour, no satellite data. Just a straight line, like I never left the main trail. And yet, I saw it. And sometimes, late at night, I swear, I hear it. That same voice, whispering. Like he's still waiting for someone to find it.
Some mysteries should stay buried. Some trails should never be followed. But what if you don't have a choice? The Lost Dutchman's gold has lured treasure hunters, historians, and dreamers for over a century. Some return empty-handed. Others don't return at all. It's like old Jacob said, "It ain't about finding it, son. It's about what finds you." They say the mind still calls to those who listen, a flicker of light in the canyon, the scent of fire and dust on the wind, a shadow moving where no man has been. If the gold is still out there, are you sure you'd want to find it? The Superstition Mountains have claimed over 600 lives since the 1890s, more than any other treasure hunting location in America. And today, we're just heard one of the most compelling recent encounters with its most famous mystery.
The Lost Dutchman's Mine. You know, what fascinates me is how consistent these sightings remain, even with all our modern technology.
Exactly. And this latest account follows patterns we've seen for over a century. The mysterious prospector, the hidden passage, that sense of something just beyond our understanding.
What really stands out about this witness's experience compared to historical accounts?
Well, the GPS anomaly is particularly interesting. Modern equipment showing no record of his detour, despite him clearly spending hours in that canyon. It mirrors reports from the 1920s where compasses would suddenly stop working.
And that matches what the Bureau of Land Management has documented. Approximately 40 cases of unexplained equipment malfunctions in that area just last year.
You know what's fascinating? The Apache people had specific warnings about this exact region. Their historical records, passed down through oral tradition, describe areas where the natural world seems to shift.
The geological aspects are pretty remarkable too. The superstitions were formed by volcanic activity around 25 million years ago, creating perfect conditions for unusual mineral deposits.
And speaking of deposits, the way our witness describes that gold vein, like lightning frozen in stone, matches geological surveys from 1876. Those surveys suggested unique crystalline formations that shouldn't technically be possible at that elevation.
That's exactly what makes this case so compelling. The scientific data actually supports some elements of these encounters.
The psychological impact is equally intriguing. Studies from the University of Arizona show that 73% of people who report similar encounters in the superstitions experience lasting behavioral changes.
Like the voice he mentions hearing afterward? That ongoing sense of being watched?
Precisely. And here's something most people don't know. Between 1880 and 1960, official records show 35 experienced prospectors vanished in the area. These weren't amateur treasure hunters, these were people who knew the terrain.
Well, that ties into what the Forest Service reported last year. They're still averaging about 8 rescue operations monthly in that region.
What's particularly striking is how the physical details remain consistent across centuries. The rotted wooden beams, the scattered tools, that distinctive metallic smell. These appear in accounts from the 1890s right up to today.
And the temperature anomalies, too. Multiple scientific expeditions have recorded unexpected cold spots, sometimes 20 degrees below the surrounding area.
In 2019, a geological survey team actually had to abandon their equipment when it started giving impossible readings, showing mineral deposits that would shift location daily.
So, we're seeing modern technology confirm what Native Americans warned about centuries ago?
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. The Apache had a specific term for these areas, shadow places, where they said the boundary between worlds was thinnest.
That makes me think about those claw marks the witness described. Similar markings have been documented in at least 7 other locations across the mountain range.
And recent analysis suggests these marks couldn't have been made by any known wildlife in the region. The depth and angle of the grooves would require force beyond what's physically possible for local fauna.
Well, that certainly adds another layer to Jacob Waltz's famous deathbed warning about leaving some mysteries buried.
Speaking of Waltz, historical records show he wasn't the first to warn people away. Spanish explorers in the 1700s marked this area on their maps with the phrase Tierra del Diablo, Devil's Land.
That's fascinating considering how many modern witnesses report that same sense of something watching them.
The latest research suggests there might be a scientific explanation. The unique mineral composition of the mountains could create electromagnetic fields that affect human perception.
Though that doesn't explain everything we're seeing in these accounts.
No, it doesn't. And maybe that's the point. Some mysteries resist our attempts to explain them. As that old prospector said, it ain't about finding it. It's about what finds you.
And what keeps finding people out there in those mountains definitely seems to be getting stronger, not weaker with time.
Perhaps the real treasure isn't gold at all, but understanding why these mountains keep pulling us back, generation after generation, despite all the warnings and all the losses. And just like that, the whispers fade, the echoes of our tales drifting back into the shadows from where they came. Tonight, we've explored the unexplainable, the voices in the dark, the figures at the edge of our vision, the things that move just beyond our understanding. Each story, a glimpse through the static, a transmission from the unknown. What do you believe? Are these just coincidences, misinterpretations of the mind, or evidence that something lingers, waiting just beyond the veil? The lines are always open. Your stories, your experiences, they shape the mysteries we unravel. Have you seen something? Heard a voice when no one was there? Leave us a message. You never know. Your tale might be the next to send shivers down a listener's spine. Until next time, keep your ears hearing, keep your eyes watching, and most importantly, stay aware.